At 3 in the morning, my husband, Nolan Thomson, started talking in his sleep. My baby, be good. Daddy's getting you and mommy a new house tomorrow. I shot awake. We'd always used protection. What baby? I shoved his shoulder. What did you just say? He rolled over, eyes still shut. Just a nightmare. Dreamed some client was chasing me over money. I didn't push it. In the dark, I grabbed his phone and unlocked it. 3 months ago, there was a $50,000 transfer. Down payment. Recipient, Kelsey Ward. I searched her name. The first thing on her feed was an ultrasound photo. Our little angel has been on the way. Daddy says we'll be living in a big house by the time you're here. Posted the day after Nolan sent the money. I screenshotted everything and sent it straight to my dad. Dad, your perfect son-in-law didn't just cheat. He got another woman pregnant. I want him walking away with nothing. Dad replied almost immediately. That scum. Sweetheart, don't panic. I'm getting the best lawyer right now. He's about to learn he messed with the wrong family. I swallowed back the nausea and kept scrolling through Kelsey's posts. 1 month ago. We finally picked out our little home today. The area is amazing. Thanks to my hubby for giving me and our baby such a cozy place. The photo showed her clinging to Nolan Thomson's arm at a sales office. Her dress showed off her bump, and she was smiling brightly. Nolan had an arm around her waist. I'd never seen him look at me that gently. 2 months ago. My hubby says our baby and I are his whole world. He's giving us the best life. This steak smells so good. The picture was from some fancy restaurant. On the table sat the expensive steak I could never bring myself to order. I remembered that night. I'd wanted to celebrate my promotion there. Nolan said it was too expensive. So we got takeout. 3 months ago. 2 lines. Baby, you came at the perfect time. Your daddy and I can't wait for you. The picture showed her fingers laced with Nolan's over her stomach. Every photo felt like a knife to the chest. I cried into my pillow in the dark. Next to me, Nolan slept peacefully, a tiny smile on his face. Probably off dreaming about his perfect little secret family. I stared at his face. Whatever love I had left died right there. Nolan, did you really think I'd never find out? I'm not someone you get to walk all over. I slipped out of bed, headed to the study, and turned on my laptop. As the Jourdain family heiress, I had plenty of ways to make him regret this. First, I needed to know exactly who Kelsey was. I hired a private investigator and got her background fast. Kelsey Ward, 23, fresh out of a pretty average college. Receptionist at Nolan's company. Middle-class family. Both parents worked in factories. Just another girl trying to climb her way up. What pissed me off even more? She joined Nolan's company 6 months after we got married, meaning she'd been after a married man from day one. Shameless. The next morning, Nolan woke me the same way he always did. Babe, breakfast's ready. He kissed my forehead. I've got an important client meeting today. Might be home late. I forced a smile. Okay. Work comes first. A flash of surprise crossed his face. Guess he wasn't expecting me to go along with it so easily. I'll probably be busy the next few days. Don't overthink it. I know. I nodded like the perfect wife, while laughing inside. Busy taking your side chick to doctor appointments? After Nolan left, I drove straight to Horizon Tech. As a business partner, I had every right to show up. The receptionist at the front desk was young. Kelsey. She looked even younger and prettier in person. Long hair, clear eyes, an innocent face. You'd never guess she was sleeping with a married man. Hi, who are you here to see? She asked sweetly. I'm here for Nolan Thomson. I looked her over. She had on a loose business suit, but I still caught it. The slight curve of her stomach. She was already showing. Mr. Thomson is in a meeting. Can I get your name? Johanna Jourdain. Her face changed instantly. She knew exactly who I was. Nolan's wife. Ms. Jourdain. 1 second. I'll let Mr. Thomson know right away. She grabbed the phone so fast she almost fumbled it. I heard her lower her voice. Mr. Thomson, your wife's here. A minute later, Nolan rushed out with a tight smile. Babe, what are you doing here? His eyes flicked to Kelsey. I wanted to see your office. Maybe grab lunch with you. I slipped my arm through his. Sure. Let's eat at the restaurant upstairs. Way too quick. He was already trying to get me out of there. In the elevator, I asked casually. That receptionist is pretty cute. How old is she? Not sure. She's a new intern. Too fast. I don't really pay attention. Oh. I nodded, already filing that under bullshit. During lunch, I asked if he'd been stressed lately, if he wasn't feeling well. I kept putting food on his plate. He looked touched. You care about me the most. I'm so lucky to have you. I almost lost my appetite listening to him. By the way, I said like I just remembered. A friend told me about this new neighborhood. Should we start looking at houses too? His fork froze. Looking at houses? Isn't our place fine? It's kind of small. If we have kids someday, we might need more space. His face shifted. No rush on kids. Things are tight right now. Tight? Funny. Money didn't seem tight when he bought his side chick a house. You're right. We can wait. I smiled and played along. But now I saw him for exactly who he was. That afternoon, I used the bathroom as an excuse and walked past the front desk on purpose. Kelsey was chatting with a coworker. The doctor said the baby's healthy. Due date's at the end of the year. Kelsey, you're seriously so lucky. Your boyfriend spoils you. He bought you a house and treats you like a princess. Yeah. He said he'll marry me after the baby's born. She looked like she was glowing. Marry her? I almost laughed. He hadn't even divorced me yet. Kelsey looked up and saw me. The color drained from her face. Ms. Jourdain. I walked over and smiled sweetly. You're Kelsey, right? You're pregnant? Congrats. She instinctively covered her stomach. Thank you, Ms. Jourdain. The baby's father treats you well, right? Yeah. She wouldn't look at me. Good. People should appreciate what they have. And stay away from scumbags. I held her gaze for a second, then walked away. Outside the building, I took a slow breath. Kelsey, do you really think staying in the background keeps you safe? I'll show you exactly what a wife can do. That night, Nolan came home late, smelling like women's perfume. Client dinner. Had a few drinks. He let out a small burp. I'm gonna shower. The second he walked into the bathroom, I grabbed his phone. Kelsey. Honey, the appointment went great. The doctor said we could find out the gender. It's a boy. Nolan. That's amazing. My son. I'll take you shopping for baby stuff tomorrow. You're the best. I love you. I love you and our baby too. Once he's here, we'll finally be a real family. I felt sick reading it. They already had it all planned out. Just waiting for me, the wife, to disappear. Keep dreaming. I put his phone back and pasted on a sweet smile. When Nolan came out of the shower, I walked over and started rubbing his shoulders. You've been working hard. So many client dinners lately. He leaned back and enjoyed it, looking way too pleased with himself. It's all for our future. Oh right. I kept my voice casual. I saw your receptionist today. She looks pregnant. Pretty young to be having a baby. His body went stiff. Really? I didn't notice. She looks at least 3 or 4 months along. Young people these days don't know how to be careful. He let out a fake laugh. I laughed inside but kept smiling. I hope her boyfriend's doing the right thing. Otherwise it'd be pretty messed up. I'm sure he is. He was already sweating. The next day, I had the PI keep following them. No surprise there. Nolan took Kelsey to some upscale baby store. The pictures showed them acting like a happy little family. His arm around her waist. His hand on her stomach. The way he looked at her. It was the same look he used to give me when we first got married. Then it got worse. They stopped at a jewelry store. He bought her a $20,000 diamond ring. Back when we got married, I told him I didn't need anything expensive. He'd look so touched he almost cried. Now he could drop 20 grand on his side chick? I saved every photo. Future divorce evidence. That afternoon, I went to the shopping district Kelsey always hung around and pretended to shop. Didn't take long to find her. She was sitting in a cafe with a friend. I grabbed a seat nearby and listened. Kelsey, are you sure about this? He's married. So what? Kelsey looked completely unbothered. He doesn't even love his wife. He's only still with her because her family's rich. He said once I give him a son, he'll find some excuse to divorce her. But what if he's lying to you? He's not. Kelsey lifted her hand and flashed the ring. This ring cost 20 grand. He bought me a house too. If he wasn't serious, would he spend that kind of money? Her friend still looked unsure. But what if his wife finds out? So what if she does? Kelsey rubbed her stomach with a smug smile. I'm carrying his son. That's my biggest advantage. Guys always want kids with their blood. He's not walking away from us. She snorted. And that old lady? 3 years of marriage and no baby. I got pregnant once, and it's a boy. Who do you think he's picking? Old lady? I almost lost it right there. I was 28. 28 was old now? I swallowed the anger and kept listening. He promised once our son's born, he'll make us official and make me his wife. Her eyes practically sparkled. Then I'll be living the rich wife life. I won't have to deal with anybody anymore. Does Johanna know about you? Probably not. Kelsey smirked. Nolan's really good at hiding stuff. Never slips up. But even if she finds out, so what? I have a son. She doesn't. I win. Enough. I'd heard enough. I got up and walked out of the cafe. The second I stepped outside, I called my dad. Dad, it's time. You sure? Once we do this, there's no going back. I'm sure. I stared ahead. They pushed too far. I want them to know what happens when they betray our family. All right. We start tomorrow. I hung up and watched the sun drop below the horizon. Inside me, something was already burning. The third day was Saturday. Nolan said he had a client meeting. Really, he was going to see Kelsey. I played along and watched him pull out of the driveway. The second he was gone, I called an emergency board meeting as CEO of Jourdain Corp. Everyone, I have an announcement. I stood at the head of the table, cool and composed. Starting now, Jourdain Corp is cutting all ties with Horizon Tech. The directors traded looks. Johanna, why? Horizon Tech has always been a major partner. Because their CEO, Nolan Thomson, has serious character issues. That doesn't match Jourdain Corp's values. But ending contracts out of nowhere will trigger penalties. I'll pay them. No hesitation. This is about principle. The meeting ended, and I immediately reached out to Horizon Tech's biggest clients. Jourdain Corp had influence. I had connections. Didn't take long for people to start getting nervous. By that afternoon, Nolan's phone was blowing up. I sat at home sipping tea while he paced the balcony, taking call after call. Mr. Warren, why end things so suddenly? We've always had a good partnership. Mr. Lowell, maybe there's been some misunderstanding? We can work out a new price. Mr. Chase, please reconsider. Our company really needs this project. Watching him spiral was putting me in a great mood. That night, Nolan came home looking drained. Babe, work got messy today. He tried to act like he had it together. What happened? I asked, concern all over my face while I laughed inside. A few major clients suddenly pulled out. I have no clue why. He rubbed his temples, frustrated. Could competitors be messing with things behind the scenes? I tilted my head. Maybe. Something flickered across his face. A few companies have been trying to steal our business lately. I smiled to myself. He still had no clue the real problem was sitting right next to him. Don't stress too much. I kept my voice soft. We'll figure it out. Worst case, my family can help. He looked at me like I hung the moon. Having you is the best thing that's ever happened to me. I don't know what I'd do without you. Hypocrite. If I was really that great, why cheat on me? But he wouldn't be saying that for much longer. Early the next morning, my phone rang. Kelsey, Miss Jourdain, I want to talk to you. Her voice shook. Sure. Pick a place. An hour later, we met at a quiet cafe. Kelsey was wearing a loose maternity dress. Her face was pale, eyes red and puffy. She'd clearly been crying. Miss Jourdain, I think you already know Nolan is the baby's father. Her voice wavered. I just looked at her. No anger. No surprise. That only made her more nervous. I never meant to ruin your marriage. The excuses came fast. He told me he didn't love you. He said your marriage was just for appearances. What else did he say? He said he only married you because of family interests. That there was never any real love. Her voice kept getting quieter. I let out a cold laugh. And you actually bought that? Nothing. Do you even hear yourself? I stood, looking down at her. You thought sleeping with a married man and getting pregnant would put you in my spot. She instantly wrapped a hand around her stomach. I'll leave. If you give me money, I swear I'll disappear. You'll never see me again. Money? I laughed. How much exactly do you think you're worth? 500,000. She said carefully. 500,000? My voice cut through the cafe. You think you're worth that? I sat back down, crossed my legs and stared at her. You won't get a dime. Because pretty soon, both of you will have nothing. I stood and started walking away. Miss Jourdain, Kelsey called after me. You can't do this. I'm carrying Nolan's son. You can't ignore this. I turned back, my eyes cold. Are you sure that baby's Nolan's? The expression on Kelsey's face as I walked away was worth every second of the confrontation. She stood frozen, her hands still clutching her stomach, her mouth slightly open as the color completely drained from her cheeks. Are you sure that baby is Nolan's? Those 8 words would hang over her like a guillotine. I didn't look back as I pushed open the glass door of the cafe and stepped into the cool afternoon air. I slipped on my sunglasses, got into my car, and immediately dialed Leo, the private investigator I had hired. Leo, did you get the files I asked for? Just finished organizing them, Ms. Jourdain. Leo's steady voice came through the speaker. I sent them to your secure email. It's exactly what you suspected. Kelsey Ward wasn't just seeing Nolan these past few months. I pulled over to the side of the road and opened the email on my phone. The report was thorough. It detailed Kelsey's life over the last year. While she had been playing the role of the innocent, starry-eyed in turn eager to please her wealthy boss, her financial and personal records painted a very different picture. Before Nolan, and even during the initial months of their affair, Kelsey had been in an on and off relationship with a man named Tyler Vance. Tyler was her college sweetheart, a handsome but chronically unemployed aspiring musician who spent most of his time drinking and getting into debt. According to the hotel registries, restaurant receipts, and surveillance photos Leo had gathered, Kelsey and Tyler had checked into a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city on several occasions. One of those dates was exactly 3 months ago. The exact same week Kelsey claimed she conceived Nolan's child. I zoomed in on one of the photos. It showed Kelsey and Tyler laughing outside a convenience store. Tyler had his arm draped casually over her shoulder, and she was looking up at him with a genuine, carefree smile, a smile far more relaxed than the staged, tense grins she wore in her photos with Nolan. Perfect, I murmured. Do you want me to send these to Mr. Thompson? Leo asked. No, I replied, a cold smile touching my lips. Not yet. If I give him the truth now, he'll just find a way to minimize his losses. I want him to invest everything he has left into this life first. Let him build his dream castle on sand. It'll hurt much more when it collapses. Understood, Ms. Jourdain. What's our next step? Keep an eye on Tyler. If he's as broke as your report says, he'll be looking for a payday soon. Let's make sure he knows exactly how much money his girlfriend has been spending lately. Consider it done. I hung up the phone and leaned back against the headrest. Nolan had spent 3 years pretending to be the supportive, humble husband who didn't care about my family's wealth. He had played the long game, slowly, building his company Horizon Tech, using my family's connections and resources, all while secretly planning to discard me the moment he felt financially secure, and had an heir to carry on his name. He wanted a son. He wanted a legacy. He wanted a sweet, compliant young wife who would look up to him as her savior. I was going to make sure he got exactly what he deserved. A lifetime of paying for another man's child, while the empire he tried to steal from me crumbled into nothing. When I returned home that evening, the house was quiet. Nolan was sitting in the living room, staring blankly at a bottle of scotch on the coffee table. The television was on, but his eyes weren't on the screen. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in a single afternoon. Nolan? I called out softly, stepping into the room and placing my designer handbag on the console table. Are you all right? You look exhausted. He jumped slightly, as if pulled from a deep trance. He forced a weak smile and quickly rubbed his face. Hey babe. Yeah, just a rough day at the office. The market is incredibly volatile right now. I heard, I said, walking over and sitting down beside him. I gently placed my hand over his. His skin was cold and clammy. My father mentioned something about Jourdain Corp restructuring some of its partnerships. Is Horizon Tech having trouble? Nolan's hand twitched. He tried to keep his voice level, but I could hear the desperate edge in it. It's just a temporary setback. Some administrative misunderstandings. I'm sure once I talk to your dad, we can smooth things over. You know how much this partnership means to us, Johanna. Of course I do, I said, my voice dripping with sympathy. But you know how my father is. Once he gets an idea in his head, he's incredibly stubborn. He thinks Horizon Tech has been underperforming lately. He's even talking about pulling all of Jourdain Corp's capital out of your next expansion project. Nolan's face turned pale. He can't do that. If he pulls the capital now, the project will fail, and we'll be liable for the breach of contract with our overseas suppliers. We could lose everything. I know, darling. That's why I've been thinking. I leaned in closer, looking at him with wide, concerned eyes. We need to protect what we have. If the worst happens and Horizon Tech faces a lawsuit, the creditors will come after your personal assets. The house, your savings, your shares. Nolan swallowed hard. What are you suggesting? We should temporarily shield your assets, I whispered, as if sharing a deep, dark secret. Transfer your personal shares in Horizon Tech and the deeds to our properties into my name. Jourdain Corp's legal team can easily protect my assets from any third-party claims. Once the storm passes, we can transfer everything back to you. Nolan stared at me. For a fraction of a second, I saw a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. He was a businessman, after all. He knew the risks of transferring everything to someone else. But desperation is a powerful blindfold. I don't know, Johanna. That's a lot of paperwork. And it seems a bit drastic, doesn't it? Only if you don't trust me, I said softly, letting a trace of hurt creep into my voice. I began to withdraw my hand. I'm only trying to save us. If you think you can handle the creditors on your own, then by all means, ignore me. I just don't want to see you lose everything you've worked so hard for. No, babe, it's not that. Nolan quickly caught my hand, pulling me back. Of course I trust you. You've always been by my side. It's a big decision. Think about it, I said, giving him a gentle pat on the cheek as I stood up. But don't think too long. My father's board meets on Thursday. Once they vote to terminate the contract, the legal notices will go out, and your assets will be frozen. We have 48 hours. I walked toward the kitchen, leaving him alone with his thoughts. I knew he would do it. He had spent 3 years convinced that I was a naive, lovesick heiress who wrapped her entire identity around him. He truly believed. He had me wrapped around his finger. To him, transferring his assets to me was the safest bet because he never imagined I would ever turn against him. Later that night, while Nolan was in the study making frantic calls to his financial advisors, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. We need to talk. I know what you're planning. Kelsey. I smiled and deleted the message. Let her panic. The show was only just beginning. The next morning, I arrived at my office at Jourdain Corp to find my father waiting for me. He was sipping espresso, a stack of legal documents resting on the desk in front of him. He signed them, my father said, a grim smile on his face. His lawyer just delivered the signed asset transfer agreements. Every single share Nolan owned in Horizon Tech, along with his personal bank accounts and the deed to his family's old estate, has been transferred to your holding company. I sat down across from him, feeling a quiet sense of triumph. He really is a fool. He thought he was saving himself from the creditors. He thought he was outsmarting us, my father corrected, his eyes flashing with anger. The nerve of that boy. To use our family's name, our money, and then dare to disrespect you like this. If your mother were still here, she'd have had him run out of the state by now. We're doing something much better, Dad, I said quietly. We're letting him destroy himself. What about the girl? My father asked. Kelsey Ward. I have something special planned for her, I replied. But first, I need to make sure Tyler Vance plays his part. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number Leo had provided. It rang 3 times before a rough, sleepy voice answered. Who's this? Tyler Vance. I asked, keeping my voice businesslike and cold. Who's asking? Someone who wants to help you get what you're owed, I said. I believe your girlfriend, Kelsey, recently bought a house. A very expensive house in the Northwood district. She also received a $20,000 diamond ring. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear Tyler shifting in bed, his breathing growing heavier. What are you talking about? Kelsey doesn't have that kind of money. She's just a receptionist. She didn't have that money, I corrected. But her new benefactor does. The CEO of Horizon Tech, Nolan Thomson. He's been sleeping with her for months. Tyler. He bought her that house, and he bought her that ring. And right now, she's carrying a baby she claims is his. That lying bitch. Tyler muttered, his voice shaking with a mixture of rage and disbelief. She told me she was working overtime. She said she was staying with her sister. She's been staying in a luxury villa, I said smoothly. And if you play your cards right, you can get a piece of that wealth. After all, you and Kelsey were together the week she got pregnant, weren't you? Another long silence. Tyler was stupid, but he wasn't completely blind. You're his wife, aren't you? The rich one. It doesn't matter who I am, I said. What matters is that Kelsey is about to secure a massive payout from Nolan. If that baby is yours, Tyler, you're entitled to half of everything she gets. But if you let her marry him, she'll discard you forever. She'll live in luxury while you struggle to pay rent. What do you want me to do? Tyler asked, his tone turning desperate. Go see her, I said. Show up at her new house. Demand what's yours. Let's see how she explains your presence to Nolan. I hung up the phone and leaned back. The stage was set. The players were in position. All that was left was to pull the trigger. The Northwood district was quiet on Wednesday afternoon. It was an upscale neighborhood, the kind of place where neighbors minded their own business, and the streets were lined with manicured lawns and high-security gates. Nolan had bought Kelsey a beautiful 2-story townhouse here. It was far more modern and expensive than our own home, which he had always claimed we couldn't afford to upgrade. I sat in my SUV parked a block away, watching through a pair of binoculars. At approximately 2 p.m., a battered, noisy sedan pulled up to the curb in front of Kelsey's townhouse. Tyler Vance got out. He was wearing faded jeans, a leather jacket, and a scowl that could cut through glass. He walked up the driveway and began banging heavily on the front door. A minute later, the door opened. Kelsey stood there, wearing a silk robe. Even from this distance, I could see the sheer panic on her face when she realized who was standing on her doorstep. She tried to slam the door, but Tyler shoved his foot in the frame. He forced his way inside, and the door clicked shut behind them. I checked my watch. 10 minutes, I whispered to myself. I picked up my phone and called Nolan. Nolan, honey, I said, my voice sweet and breathless. I'm so sorry to bother you at work, but I was just driving through Northwood to look at that property we talked about, and I swear I saw your receptionist, Kelsey. What? Nolan's voice was instantly sharp. What do you mean? Well, I saw her standing outside that beautiful new townhouse on Elm Street. But there was a very aggressive-looking man with her. They were screaming at each other on the porch, and then he forced his way inside. She looked absolutely terrified. I was worried she might be in danger. Since she's your employee, I thought you should know. Should we call the police? No. Don't call the police. Nolan panicked. I'll handle it. I'm nearby. I'll go check on her. Johanna, stay away from there. It could be dangerous. Okay, darling. Please be careful, I said, hanging up the phone with a satisfied smirk. I didn't have to wait long. 15 minutes later, Nolan's Mercedes SUV came tearing down the street, screeching to a halt right behind Tyler's battered sedan. Nolan practically threw himself out of the car and sprinted up the steps, slamming his fist against the door. Kelsey, open the door, he roared. The door flew open, and Nolan stormed inside. Through the large bay window of the living room, the drama unfolded like a silent movie. I saw Nolan shouting, gesturing wildly. Then Tyler stepped into view, shoving Nolan backward. Nolan stumbled over a coffee table, crashing to the floor. Kelsey was in the middle, crying, her hands over her face, trying to separate the two men. Tyler pointed a finger at Kelsey, then at his own chest and finally at her stomach. Even without audio, the message was clear. That's my baby. Nolan looked as if he had been struck by lightning. He stared at Kelsey, his mouth moving in silent shock, then turned his gaze to Tyler. The argument escalated. Tyler threw a punch, clipping Nolan across the jaw. Nolan fell back again, clutching his face. I decided it was time to make my entrance. I got out of my car, walked casually down the street, and stepped through the wide-open front door of the townhouse. The living room was a disaster. An expensive vase had been shattered on the hardwood floor. Nolan was on his knees, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. Tyler was standing over him, panting, while Kelsey sobbed on the sofa. My goodness, I said, my voice cutting through the tension like a knife through ice. What on earth is going on here? Everyone froze. Nolan looked up, his eyes widening in sheer terror as he saw me standing in the doorway. Johanna, what are you doing here? I was worried about you, darling, I said, walking into the room and carefully stepping over the broken glass. I looked at Tyler, then at Kelsey and finally at Nolan. But it seems you have a lot of explaining to do. Why are you in your receptionist's house? And why is this gentleman claiming her baby is his? Johanna, please, Nolan stammered, scrambling to his feet. He looked pathetic. His expensive suit rumpled, his face smeared with blood and sweat. It's not what it looks like. I was trying to help her. She's an employee. She was being harassed. Harassed? Tyler laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. Is that what you call it? I'm her boyfriend, you idiot. Or at least, I was until she decided to start sleeping with her boss for a free house. Shut up, Tyler. Kelsey screamed, her voice cracking. She looked at Nolan, her eyes begging for mercy. Nolan, don't listen to him. He's crazy. He's just trying to extort us. The baby is yours, I swear it's yours. Is it? I asked, tilting my head. Because Tyler seems very confident. And honestly, Kelsey, you don't exactly have a reputation for honesty. Johanna, let's go home, Nolan begged, reaching for my arm. We can talk about this at home. Please. This is a mess. I stepped back, avoiding his touch. My expression, which had been soft and concerned, slowly hardened into a mask of pure, unadulterated coldness. No, Nolan. We're not going home. And we're not talking about this at home. Because we don't have a home together anymore. Nolan froze. What? What do you mean? I pulled a thick manila envelope from my bag and tossed it onto the coffee table. It landed with a heavy thud. Open it, I said. With trembling hands, Nolan picked up the envelope and pulled out the contents. Inside were dozens of high-resolution photos. Kelsey and Nolan kissing in his car. Kelsey showing off her pregnant stomach with Nolan's hand on her waist. The bank transfer records of the $50,000 down payment. And finally, the photos of Kelsey and Tyler entering the motel together. Nolan's eyes darted across the pages, his breath catching in his throat. You knew, he whispered, looking up at me as if seeing me for the first time. How long? Since the night you talked in your sleep, I said, my voice steady and devoid of emotion. You told me it was a nightmare about a client. But I knew. I've always known how desperate you were to escape my family's shadow, Nolan. You thought you could use our money to build your company, and then discard me for a younger, more compliant version who would give you the legacy you so desperately craved. Johanna, I'm sorry, he cried, taking a step toward me. It was a mistake. A stupid, meaningless mistake. I was stressed, I wasn't thinking straight. Save it, I interrupted. The apology is 3 months too late. And frankly, I don't care. We can fix this, he pleaded, tears finally spilling over his eyes. We can go to counseling. I'll fire her. I'll sell this house. We'll start over. With whose money? I asked, a cold, mocking smile playing on my lips. Nolan blinked. What? Did you forget, Nolan? You transferred all of your personal assets to my holding company yesterday. Your shares in Horizon Tech, your bank accounts, your family's estate, they all belong to me now. Legally. Permanently. Nolan's face went completely blank. The realization hit him like a physical blow, draining the last remnants of color from his skin. No, you said it was temporary. To protect them from the creditors. There are no creditors, I said smoothly. Jourdain Corp isn't suing Horizon Tech. We simply ended our partnership. The restructuring was a lie I made up to make you panic. And you, in your desperate rush to hide your wealth from what you thought was a looming bankruptcy, handed everything over to me on a silver platter. You trapped me, he whispered, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and rage. You stole my company. You stole my life. I took back what was mine, I corrected. Everything you have, Nolan, you built on my family's back. You used my connections, my father's capital, and my support. You thought you could steal from me and walk away with a smile. I simply showed you the price of betrayal. I'll sue you, he roared, his desperation turning into blind fury. I'll get a lawyer. I'll prove you defrauded me. Go ahead, I said, gesturing to the room. But with what money? You don't have a dime to your name. Your bank accounts are empty. Your credit cards will be declined by tomorrow morning. And as for your precious Horizon Tech, the board of directors has already been notified of your moral failures and your attempt to embezzle company funds to buy this very townhouse. They are holding an emergency meeting right now to vote on your termination. Nolan collapsed onto the sofa, his head in his hands, dry sobbing. Kelsey stood nearby, watching him with a mixture of horror and disgust. He realized in that moment that the wealthy prince she had tried so hard to trap was now completely broke. He was no longer her ticket to the high life. He was just a ruined man with a mountain of debt. She turned her gaze to Tyler, who was looking at her with a smug, victorious grin. Looks like you're coming back to the apartment, babe, Tyler said, laughing. At least until we figure out who's paying for that kid. I turned to leave, but stopped at the doorway. I looked back at the pathetic scene one last time. Oh, and Nolan? I said, my voice sweet and mocking. Before you start planning your new life as a father, you might want to get a DNA test. Tyler seems very excited to welcome his new son. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out into the bright afternoon sun, leaving them to tear each other apart in the ruins of their own greed. Within 48 hours, the story of Nolan Thomson's fall was the talk of the city's business elite. Jourdain Corp's public relations team had handled the narrative with surgical precision. We didn't release the details of his affair to the press. Instead, we simply announced the termination of our partnership with Horizon Tech due to divergent corporate values and severe governance issues. The implication of financial instability or ethical misconduct was enough. Horizon Tech stock plunged by 40% in a single day. The board of directors, terrified of a complete collapse, voted unanimously to strip Nolan of his title as CEO. He was escorted out of the building by security, carrying his personal belongings in a single cardboard box. I watched the security footage from my office, sipping a cup of hot tea. He looked so small. The confident, handsome man who had stood at the altar 3 years ago promising to love and cherish me was gone, replaced by a hollow shell of a man who couldn't even look the security guards in the eye. He's been trying to call you, my father said, walking into my office and placing a fresh folder on my desk. 30 times today alone. He even showed up at the house, but the security team turned him away. Let him call, I said, not taking my eyes off the screen. Every call is just another admission of his defeat. We've finalized the divorce papers, my father continued, his tone turning businesslike. Since he has no assets left to contest, and the prenuptial agreement was heavily skewed in our favor anyway, his lawyers have advised him to sign. He has no leverage, Johanna. If he goes to court, we'll release the evidence of his embezzlement of Horizon Tech funds for the townhouse, and he'll end up in prison. Will he sign? He has no choice. He's currently living in a cheap motel near the highway. The Mercedes was repossessed this morning because the lease was in the company's name. He's completely ruined. I felt a quiet sense of satisfaction, but there was still one loose end to tie up. What about Kelsey? I asked. She's in a bad way, my father replied, a trace of amusement in his voice. Tyler Vance has been refusing to leave her alone, demanding a DNA test to prove the child is his so he can claim child support from her. She tried to go back to her parents' house, but they found out about the affair and the pregnancy, and they've refused to take her in. She's currently staying in a dingy rental apartment with Tyler, and they're apparently fighting constantly. Let's speed up the DNA test, I said, a cold smile appearing on my face. I want to make sure Nolan gets his final answer. 3 weeks later, I received a notification from Leo. The DNA results were ready. Nolan had managed to scrape together enough money, mostly by selling his expensive watch and some designer clothes, to pay for a non-invasive prenatal paternity test. He had been holding on to a sliver of hope that the baby was indeed his, that he still had a son, a legacy, some reason to keep fighting. I arranged to meet him at a small, quiet park on the edge of the city. When he arrived, I almost didn't recognize him. He had lost weight, his cheeks sunken and his eyes bloodshot. He was wearing a faded jacket and wrinkled pants, his hair unwashed and messy. "Johanna," he whispered, stepping toward the bench where I sat. He looked like a beggar pleading for scraps. "Thank you for coming. I'm only here to hand you these," I said, slide a sealed white envelope across the wooden slats of the bench. He stared at the envelope as if it were a bomb. His hands shook violently as he picked it up and tore it open. I watched his eyes scan the medical document. Probability of paternity, 0%. Tyler Vance is identified as the biological father. Nolan let out a sound, a choked, pathetic gasp that sounded like a dying animal. He dropped the paper, and it fluttered to the grass. He covered his face with his hands and began to weep, his shoulders shaking violently. "She lied to me," he sobbed, his voice muffled by his hands. She told me it was mine. She said we were going to be a family. I gave up everything for her. I gave up you. I gave up my company, my life." "You didn't give up anything, Nolan," I said, my voice cold and steady. "You threw it away. Out of greed. Out of arrogance. You thought you were smarter than everyone else, but you were just a fool who was easily manipulated by a girl who saw you as a cash cow." "Please, Johanna." He fell to his knees in front of me, grasping at the hem of my coat. "I made a mistake. I was stupid. Please give me another chance. I'll do anything. I'll work for your father's company as an intern. I'll live in the guest house. Just don't leave me with nothing." I looked down at him, feeling absolutely nothing. No anger, no pity, no regret. Just a profound sense of indifference. "You brought this on yourself, Nolan," I said, gently pulling my coat from his grasp. "You wanted a new house, a new wife, and a new baby. Well, you don't get any of those. You get to live with the consequences of your choices." I stood up, leaving him kneeling on the grass, clutching the paper that proved his entire fantasy was a lie. Goodbye, Nolan. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. The media had moved on to other scandals, and Horizon Tech, now under new management and a different name, was slowly recovering from the damage Nolan had caused. I had absorbed his shares into my own portfolio, securing my position as one of the most powerful shareholders in the region. I stood on the balcony of my new penthouse apartment, looking out over the city skyline. The air was crisp and clear, and the future felt entirely mine. My phone buzzed on the table. It was an email from Leo, containing a final update on the 2 people who had tried to destroy my life. Nolan had taken a job as a low-level sales representative at a car dealership on the outskirts of the city. He lived in a cramped, shared apartment his nights spent drinking cheap beer and staring at the television. He was permanently banned from the high society circles he had once fought so hard to enter. Kelsey had given birth to a baby boy. Tyler Vance had indeed been confirmed as the father, but he had quickly abandoned her when he realized there was no money to be had. She was now a single mother, working 2 jobs to pay for rent and childcare, living in a small, rundown apartment far from the luxury lifestyle she had dreamed of. I closed the email and locked my phone. I didn't feel a need to celebrate. Their misery wasn't my source of happiness. My freedom was. I picked up my glass of champagne, took a slow sip, and smiled at the quiet, peaceful evening. I had survived the betrayal, and in doing so, I had built a life that was entirely my own, stronger, wealthier, and far more beautiful than before.